I'm gonna take it again. I'm gonna take 3 of them, so I have a choice.
Flag isn't flying too clearly there, though, you know. But you'll catch some of it, which is good. And you can also catch some of these handsome calves now and then, maybe. You know?
Yeah. In fact, maybe the 3rd one I'll do like that, Ruby, after the traffic moves. So I'll catch the cabs, the flag, and then the entrance.
I think when you do that, then we'll go over to that corner, and that's when I'll come out.
All right. Are you going to be warm enough standing out here?
Oh, sure. I'm fine.
It's be freezing today.
Well, if you stay out too long, you will be, but I'm fine.
Okay. So after this traffic goes, I'll shoot that and we'll go back in. So anyway, I found if I spent a night on the floor, as intolerable as it was to my spirit, to my body, when I got up in the morning, I felt better.
My father used to sleep on the floor all the time. He had a bed back. Moving here.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to shoot you first.
No, I wouldn't do it on this side.
Okay.
Just concentrate on the building and on the cab, and then we'll move across the street. Right there behind you to catch the car. That's a nice shot.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Beautiful.
An excellent thought, in fact.
Hi, good morning. Matthew Paris, my good friend. Welcome to New York City, the New York Athletic Club. I spent 35 years of my life playing handball for the club. I want to welcome you inside so we can look at some of the places I've enjoyed this wonderful game the most. Come on in, let's go. All right. Hi, welcome to the wonderful world of handball. This is an ongoing series showing the public at large the beauty and the intricacy of this wonderful game of handball. Keep in mind, there are different versions of the game. The first version is one-wall handball. We showed you that last time. We just hit a ball straight to a wall. The angles are pretty much straight ahead, slightly to an angle because there are no side walls. You have to have tremendous lateral movement. This version of the game is four-wall. And you're seeing me on the same court that I first entered 35 years ago as my brothers and I attempted to create handball history. This is the famous New York Athletic Club located on Central Park South, and this is the very court where I started my own personal career. My brothers Oscar and Carl, my name is Ruby Obert. We've captured 92 national championships in 1, 3, and 4 wall. This particular segment will concern 4 wall. First recognized tournament started in 1919 and was won by Bill Murderball Renth. some of the ways the players play. And allegedly now we're more gentlemanly. We don't have any more murder ball revs, but we have some wonderful names from that time right through the present moment. Names like Joe Playtag, who won the Nationals 7 straight years. He was a fixture at the Lakeshore Club in Chicago, and he stayed in shape by running up and down the back stairs pretty much all day long. He was a sensational player. He was known for power with both hands, and since in those days they played on courts 24 by 48, that is 24 feet wide, 48 feet long, you had to be in tremendous shape. He was then followed by such greats as Victor Hershkowitz, then followed by such luminaries as Oscar Obert, Jimmy Jacobs, John Sloan, Paul Haber, right through the modern day of Fred Lewis, Natty Alvarado, and our current champion, John Bike, who is a member also of the New York Athletic Club. So, let's start with the basics. Remember I said they used to play on even larger courts. What we've done in the meantime was to cut down the dimension of the court in order to stimulate a lot of faster-paced athletic prowess. Now keep in mind, to play this game, you can't just play with one arm. You have to play with two arms. The champions have to be completely ambidextrous. That means that they have to pursue this little ball, which is about 2 inches in diameter, 2 ounces in weight, and it travels around not one surface as in one wall, but 6 surfaces, namely the 4 walls, the floor, and the ceiling. This court, which is now down to the regulation size for national championships, 20 feet wide, 40 feet long, with a 20-foot ceiling. Now, in order to start this game, you have to keep in mind one thing. The court is divided exactly in half by this line. 20 feet from the front wall, 20 feet from the back wall. This is the serving line. In one wall, the serving line is in front of me. In this particular version of the game, the serving line is behind me. This line you see in front of me is approximately 5 feet from the service line. This is known as the service box. I must begin and end my serve within the confines of this box. Now, over the years, players have become taller, so there's been some recent ideas about changing the size of this box. There was an idea that you could now at least have 1 foot in the box so that taller players could stand outside and move forward, but not going over this front line. Keep in mind, though, that even though the players have gotten taller and stronger, we had tall players in the old days too. And you know how they compensated for their height? Instead of moving forward with their serve, they moved at an angle. So they brought their long legs this way and still generated enough power to put the ball in play. To start this game, you have to bounce the ball within this service box. You must hit the ball before it bounces a second time. But keep in mind, you can have as many of these one bounces as you desire until it's just where you want it in order to hit the ball properly, putting it in play. To serve the ball, you must always hit the front wall first. After you hit the front wall first, the bounce can be either on the floor in back of this so-called short line, or it can hit either side wall, so long as it then hits in this area back here called the receiving zone. It sounds complicated, but it's really simple once you play the game. Only the server, and he gets that serve with the toss of a coin, only the server can score a point. So now as he attempts to put the ball in play, and his opponent, called the receiver, will attempt to return that ball, the receiver must return it either before or after the first floor bounce, but not can hit the ball to the ceiling and then hit the front wall. That's still playable. And each side keeps continuing in alternate fashion until one side misses. If I serve or miss, I lose up the serve and my right to score points. Then my receiver friend comes in and now he's the server. The first person to score 21 points will have won the first game. The first person to win 2 games at 21 points will be the winner of the match. If both men win 1 game each, then you go to what's called a tiebreaker. The modern version of the game has been changed recently that the tiebreaker is now only 11 points. You don't win by 2 points, you don't extend it as you do in tennis. You're the first player who then gets that 11 point wins the match. So let's get down to basics for a moment. I've introduced you to the 4-wall venue where this stuff takes place. I've showed you how you have to be in this service box in order to serve properly. And I've shown you how the game continues by going into the receiving area, and then each side tries to get the other person out to get the serve so he can score. But preliminary to that, remember before I mentioned to you that this little ball is only 2 inches in diameter. It weighs only 2 ounces. But believe me, if you were to try and hit this ball improperly, you will wind up hurting your head. So the first thing I want you to think about is to enjoy the maximum of this beautiful game, is to just bear with me, and I'll go through this fairly rapidly because on other tapes, the same technique is employed. From that point, we'll go on to serves, service return, general theory, and some very penetrating questions by our famed photographer, Matthew Paris. So, you take this ball, and before you even hit it, you get your feet aligned in such a way, 1 foot in front of the other, like a baseball pitcher on the mound. In order to generate leverage and power, this is the way that your feet should be aligned. The weight starts on the back, and then comes forward. But before you even hit this little ball, what you want to do is concentrate on throwing the ball. Just as a pitcher would. Concentrate on throwing the ball, similar to this. We're going to do this in sort of slow motion so that you can see the movement of my body as the ball comes forward. I'm not releasing the ball here. I'm releasing the ball in front of myself. By releasing the ball in front of myself, I will soon generate maximum power, and that's one of the ingredients for this great game. Power, but also brains. We'll talk about the technique first, then we'll talk about the power, and then we'll talk about the most important ingredient, the brains. So, continue this until you can do it in such a way that the rebound will strike somewhere midway between the ball and you, and that the rebound comes just about even with your head. We're going to talk about the overhand shot first, okay? Then we'll get into the sidearm and the underhand. What I'm giving now is the actual motion that is employed in hitting this ball correctly. So having thrown it a number of times successfully, we're going to try and now hit the ball. But I don't want to meet this ball head on, that will hurt. The next step is to think about this. There's energy in the ball. As it comes toward you, if you meet it with an equal force, your arm and hand has to absorb that force and it will cause pain. But if you keep this simple trick in mind, the energy of the ball coming toward you, if you merely redirect it, and how do you redirect it? Not like this, but just cupping your hand, and as the ball approaches on its upward road, you just redirect it with the fingers. And after a while, you'll get a technique where you're actually in motion with the ball so that it won't hurt. And then you'll be able to strike the ball just like this. You'll strike it one at a time until you get it correctly. If it goes too low, you stop. But if it goes just at the right spot, you continue to hit it, just as I'm doing here. Feel free to move your feet if you have to get in line with the ball. But see what I'm doing? I'm actually using the energy of the ball to get it back to the important because in this four-ball game, you now have a ceiling. So this is the stroke for their ceiling shot. So if you keep practicing this with ease and almost effortlessly, you'll be able to put the ball to the ceiling and get your opponent out of this critical center court. Now, most people think to hit the ceiling shot, you need a lot of power. The more power you use, the less results you'll get. But with my technique and this rolling technique, by using less effort, and you aim for a spot about 3 feet from the front wall, hit it to the ceiling, and with this type of roll, the ball will continue to spin in this direction. As it's spinning in this direction, hitting the ceiling, it continues to hit the wall, still spinning in the same direction. And as it hits the floor, it continues to spin in the same direction. And when your objective is to hit it near the back wall, that same spin will halt on the back wall and the ball will drop, giving fits to your opponent. I'll show you those shots later when we talk about the different serves. What I'd like to do now is just continue after the overhand, then the side. The side arm, they use the same technique as this. But now you just move it this way. And the same rhythm of your body is involved. You want the ball someplace in this area. Believe me, everybody's different. So I'm going to discuss where that area will be. But just the technique is you approach the ball the same way like this. And then with the underhand, this way. The shoulder becomes the focal point. Your feet are lined up. And you move your arm in this way for the underhand. Now here's a trick in four-ball, which many people don't realize. If I show you the overhand, the side arm, and the underhand, all those three shots are important, but only if you're away from the side wall. As soon as your opponent puts you to the side wall, then we're going to talk only about the overhand and the underhand, not the side arm, because many great athletes have approached that ball, thought they saw the ball where they thought it was, and struck their fingers into the wall. So keep that in mind. You want to practice the underhand for an express purpose. When you get near those side walls, you want the focal point in the shoulder, you want your feet aligned this way so you can move as closely as you can, and then you just have to move the ball this way. Because you'll find out as the ball approaches that wall, 99 out of 100 times, it won't slide on the wall, giving you problems. But if you let it drop as far as it can, it ultimately comes away from the side wall. If your feet are positioned like this and your arm comes forward like this, you'll be able to continue to play. Okay? So, now that we've mastered the overhand and the side arm and the underhand, we're going to take one brief moment to have Matthew Powers ask those wonderful questions that he always has in mind. Matthew?
Okay, I've seen a few people serve, Ruby, and also volley with their left hand these shots that are high and cling to the wall, so that precisely what you're saying becomes a problem. How do you get the power when the ball is right on the wall, clinging to the wall, and almost at a very slight angle, always getting closer to the wall, so you really can't get your arm,
Sure.
and you can't get your hand? How do you deal with it?
As I just tried to indicate, keeping this little secret in mind, and Matthew was kind enough to re-emphasize it for us, as the ball approaches the side wall, 99 out of 100 times it won't cling to the wall. But if it does, if you only keep in mind the underhand stroke, and if you turn the camera this way, I'll show you what I mean.
Sure.
99 out of 100 times the ball may be coming off the wall, and it appears like it's going to hug the wall. But if you allow that ball to drop, it comes away from you. And as it's dropping, it's losing energy, which puts you in control of the shot. So as it comes off like this, it gets closer and closer to the wall, right? This next one's going to be right to the wall. But see what happens? It moves away from it. The next shot will hit Matthew in the head, and it hasn't even bothered him one bit. Okay. So, as the ball comes down the side, you see, there's no way that it's going to cling there. I can do everything I can to try and make that ball go close, and this may be a look, see? But it's still, as it comes off, it keeps moving away from this wall. There's no Velcro in toes are actually pointing to this wall. Why? Because you want your shoulder to be the focal point of this shot, and even in that one chance out of 100 where it does slide down, this enables you to just slide your hand and look. Your hand slides along the wall, and what happens then? It meets the ball, and you bring it into play. Raises a very interesting question. Fear is a terrible thing. Most players, they come from one wall typically and they try the four-wall game. Very powerful guys. Brutes, some of them. Powerful hands both sides. But as soon as they come to this wall, the side wall, they have problems. Because as you're running toward the wall, all of a sudden you see something coming toward you. It's called the wall. And therefore it sort of disorients you when you can't make the proper play because you're not confident about what's going to happen if you should get too close to that wall. Judging by what I just mentioned, if you practice these little techniques of the underhand shot when you're close to the wall, you should be able to get around most of the problems of the wall. But here's another thing you should keep in mind. Another thing is you should keep in mind, how in heaven's name do you play a ball that's traveling all around the wall? Most of the young guys, they come into this court and they're chasing the ball all around the wall. But if you see an old guy like me who plays this game with white hair taking on a football player, you'll notice that if the ball goes around the wall, eventually it has to come back someplace. So where the player will look at it and run after it, I will stand someplace in center court and just know where the ball is going to wind up. I can't. You get it? And the same thing applies if it goes over there. I know it's going to wind up someplace over here. So what does it mean? If you get used to this game, all you have to do is take maybe 3 or 4 steps this way, 3 or 4 steps that way, and you can be a star. But there's something more to being a star. It's known as staying in condition. If you don't stay in condition and you come into a closed area where you don't have free oxygen to propel your system to greater athletic heights, you're going to find yourself in a hole. You're going to be gasping. So you got to get yourself into condition. You got to eat right. You got to exercise. You got to get oxygen. And like any sport, you have to constantly make the same shot over and over again. Remember I mentioned the golfer, he doesn't want to hit that ball 200 times. The bowler doesn't want to throw it 200 or 300 times. The tennis player doesn't want to hit it 200 or 300 times. They know they must to get hand-eye coordination. If you keep practicing what I showed you before, and you hit the ball often enough, you will actually be able to see the little particles of dust on the ball as it's rotating, as a sphere usually does in space. Most players, they see a flat object coming toward them. The pro who constantly practices actually sees the spin of the ball. And seeing the spin of the ball is even more critical in formal, because depending on the type of spin you put on these balls, it'll have an opposite direction. So, the question is, how do you play the balls? By observation. You go back there, throw it around, and see what the ball does. That's step 1. Step 2 is, since we're all built differently, we approach this ball in a different pattern. So what we have to discover is this. After we practice the basics like that, we get the technique of hitting it. We'll start with the side walls. First, I want to show you what happens. I throw a ball to the front wall, hits the side wall, and then watch my feet and my response. I'm not going to hit the ball. I'm going to catch it. And that will determine, for me, the best hitting position later on. So here we go. I'm tossing the ball to the side. Here it comes, and I'm just going to catch it. See how my knees were bent, my torso was bent, my arm came to a position like this? I'll show you again. Here it comes, and now I do this, and it drops. I do the same thing on this side. I throw it there, and I move back, and I let it drop. I throw it here, and it comes back, and I let it drop. If you master the simple technique of catching the ball, and keep in mind the next time you're ready to hit it, to strike under the ball, you'll be a champion before you know it. What? Here it comes this side, I let it drop, and then you just have to hit it. I toss it to this side, and I let it drop, and then you just have to hit it. Isn't that easy. It doesn't put any stress on your body. But as you start getting better and better and you practice more and more, your legs will respond, your body will respond, your shoulder responds to this little ball, which in some cases may be traveling over 90 miles an hour. You gotta be in condition in order to get to this ball. You gotta be in condition to not only get to it, but smart enough and trained enough and talented enough to direct it someplace where your opponent won't hit it someplace else and you'll have to run for it again. We're gonna cover all those things. But now, for the moment, having shown you what you can do about the side rules, how to study that, the next thing will be, how do you play the back ball? So if Matthew will come a little bit closer with the camera, or if you have a viewfinder, you don't start hitting the ball off the back wall. As I indicated at the Coney Island courts, to give you just an idea of how the back ball is played, you take the ball and you throw it 3 feet from the back. And you don't try and hit it, you just watch what it does. You see, it's got to conform to the laws of physics. It must rebound in a certain arc, and that's what it's doing. And having done that, the next step I want you to think about is not hitting the ball, but catching it. Something like this. Something like this. I don't want you to make a face grab at it. I want you to be natural. I want you just to bring your arm forward and more or less let the ball drop in your hand. See? And now just keep doing this. And get the rhythm. Just keep getting the rhythm, okay? And after you can do that a number of times, the next step is, if your feet are in proper position, your torso is properly aligned as to what the ball will be doing, the next time this ball rebounds off the wall in its usual arc,